Hello, my friends. Welcome to today's live stream. And in this show, we are going to take you behind the scenes of how one incredible women's leadership company pivoted from online to offline to online again, and so much more. If live events are an important part of your business model, today's episode is a must watch. My guest launched her women's leadership company as an online membership initially, quickly realized that her members, emerging leaders, powerhouse women leaders from across the country, craved in-person events. So she met her members where they were. Incredible lesson for all entrepreneurs. And WNORTH became widely known for its in-person events, up to 50 events per year across its 6 global chapters, which is a feat in and of itself. Then March 2020 came. COVID-19 has all but eliminated in-person events in the short term, and the company has done a marvelous job of successfully pivoting back to its online roots. In today's episode of the 2% Scaling Strategies for Women Entrepreneurs, I am joined by Heather Odendaal. We will be discussing the art of the pivot, tips for moving offline events into the online world, and her predictions for the future of online events. My name is Eleanor Beaton. I'm an award-winning business coaching company, the founder of an award-winning business coaching company for women entrepreneurs. Our specialty is in helping women entrepreneurs clarify their message so they can dominate their niche. I would love for you to come on out. If you're watching us, introduce yourself in the comments. And we are going to be taking questions about hosting successful online events. And if any other questions come up during my conversation with this incredible woman, go ahead, post them, and we will get to as many as we can. Today's guest is Heather Odendaal. She's the founder of WNORTH, which is a global network with 6 city chapters that strives to identify and overcome systemic barriers that prevent more women from reaching high-level positions. She's been featured in Elle Canada, Huffington Post, Chatelaine, the Globe and Mail. She's won all kinds of awards. She's a brilliant entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Heather.
Thank you for having me, Eleanor.
We are so excited to be here. So tell me, where are you currently sheltering in place?
I'm sheltering in place in my home, which is in Whistler, British Columbia.
Oh my gosh.
We are enjoying some sunshine.
Right? If you're going to shelter in place, you might as well be in Whistler, one of the world's most beautiful towns.
Yes.
So listen, I've kind of given an introduction about the company, but I would love for you to take us deeper into your mission and a little bit about your business model. So what's your mission and what's the business model? How do you engage with your clients?
For sure. So to start off, our mission is to develop more women to leading positions in business. And in doing so, we'll elevate the teams they work in, the families they lead, and the communities in which they live. So with that mission, we started out actually 6 years ago with a conference that we do here in Whistler every April. And that was to support women who were mid-career on a trajectory towards senior executive leadership. There were a lot of conversations about how few women there were in the C-suite. And at the time I was working for a Fortune 500 company in sort of that mid-level position. And I just really saw that there was this lack of support for moving that mid-management professional to the next stage of their career. So we started out with a conference 6 years ago. And like you mentioned, 2 years ago, we launched our global membership to support those women, because what we were hearing over and over again from the women who were coming to the conference from all over was, this is great, we love this, we're coming once a year, but we need more. We crave more. We want to be connected with like-minded leaders. And because quite frankly, it's a difficult time in your career when you've got, depending on your scenario, when you're in that sort of mid-level position, you may have children, you may have elderly parents that you're trying to care for. There's all of these external factors, and those women were really craving like-minded, ambitious women to connect with. So
I love that,
that's
because
where
the research too shows that, at that number one, there's like the massive sort of mid-career drop off, but also that one of the big game changers are close-knit relationships with other women. So I love that, from that need, your company rose up. Yeah.
definitely, yes. And it was, at that time, I didn't even have children yet. And I was looking at some of the leaders in my circle and just seeing, the pulls that they were witnessing, and external within the companies. There are companies out there, don't get me wrong, that are doing it right in terms of, supporting women in leadership. What about women that are working for smaller companies that may not have a women's network, or they may not have specific training for their leaders? And so that's what we built the community to serve.
I love that. So tell us a little bit, and this is for the entrepreneurs, and I know you're in the house, who are always like, how does this incredible entrepreneur's business work? What's the model? And then also for those who are like, how do I engage? How do I engage with WNORTH? Tell us, what's your business model? Who are your customers, and how do they engage with you?
For sure. So we originally started out as an events business, and I actually founded an events business that does other events in 2010. So we've been in the events business for 10 years. And one of the things that became clear to me as an entrepreneur a few years ago is events are fun. They're a lot of work. And is this a sustainable business model, moving forward, scaling, and how do you scale an events business? Because I'll be honest, in 10 years of the events business, a lot of events are break even if you're lucky.
Yep.
Right. So we started thinking about ways that we could scale this business on a larger level. And simultaneously, we had those cries for, more content from our community, which we're coming from San Francisco, New York, London, Toronto. And they wanted to hear from our speakers more. They wanted to hear, have online workshops. So enter in our members club, the members club at WNORTH, that we launched 2 years ago this April. I guess we're in May. So that was our next, from an entrepreneur's perspective, from a scalability perspective, that was our next sort of stage. Yeah. And I think we're going to get into this a little bit, but one of the things that happened was we launched primarily online, because that was what we were seeing in, similar landscapes in the entrepreneurial landscape. A lot of online content. People were digesting online content 2 years ago at 2018. But in our particular demographic, we were talking to corporate leaders who were maybe not home-based. They were going into large offices. That digestion of online content was not quite there yet. And so in 2018, we launched with a lot of online workshops, Zoom workshops, kind of where we are, today, with a lot of businesses 2 years ago, recognizing that, we had a really early subscription of, I think it was 10% of our mailing list signed on as a member. So we had a really great engagement.
Yeah.
And that engagement started to drop off, about 9 months or a year in. We still had a really core founding membership, but as a few people dropped their subscription, we started to ask more questions. And the question was, well, and I think this is a really good lesson if you're not doing this, if you ever lose a customer, ask them, why are you losing them? And that's what we started to do. And overwhelmingly, the answer was, well, there's not enough in-person events. And that is when, kind of at the beginning of 2019, we started to move back to the model of in-person events and that in-person connection. Yeah.
So interesting. And, and I want to just kind of pause there because, if you think about the business, so it started out, you're working at a Fortune 500 company, and you start out with like a project initiative. It's an event. And I know that there's many of you guys who are watching this, who are in a similar situation. You have an amazing job and you have this passion, this mission. So you create it. And now it becomes like a pretty significant business. Like it's growing, it's gathering steam. You're looking for, how am I going to scale this? And so you kind of take a look at what's working in other industries, do some research. And guys, Heather is, we haven't known each other that long, but Heather is on the ball. So when you launched your online membership, it's not like you just kind of pulled that idea out of the air. There's research and stuff that goes into it. But for entrepreneurs, you do that, you try it and it might work. And then you might find, oh, you know what? I need to pivot this idea. My customers actually, they said they wanted this, but what they actually want is different. And so I love that you're sharing this story, because I think it's so important for entrepreneurs to, to really understand that their customers, their wants might change. They might say they want something, but as you offer it, actually what they wanted was something quite different. And that willingness to not only figure out what that is, but to move with them. Product market fit, that's what we call it's so important. You've got to have the thing that people want. So you so you've got your online stuff that's still happening. You reintroduce even more events. And this is where like the 50 events a year comes in, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We were talking about this. I was like, Heather, how many events do you do a year? She's like, about maybe 50 across our cities. I'm like, my hat is off to you. So you're doing these events. Then what happens? So for 2 years, you're doing these live events. Then what happens?
Yeah. And then, so we're doing, and I'll sort of preface that we're a small organization. So when we say 50 events, it's a combination of, like we do these member meetups, which could be a number, like just a few of our members meeting for coffee. In Vancouver, we all meet at the Vancouver Club for, and then we bring in a guest speaker. So one of the things I did recognize, I just want, not people to recognize that those 50 events are different scales. Mm-hmm. And we also, we delved a little deeper into what type of in-person events people wanted. And they told us, the in-person, like the connections that I make are the most important things. So the, going to an event that's got 6 to 8 people meeting at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, that has a lot of value to them. So we started doing a lot of those types of things. And then we would do dinners and lunches, which are easy to organize. Yeah. So we opted out.
Pro tip. For those who want to do a massive conference, there could be simpler way. We can take the easy way, right?
Definitely. And it's an easy way, but it's also a way that people are actually craving now. There are a lot of evening, big splashy affairs that happen on regular schedules. And so we really tried to do something that was a little bit different. And if that's what they were craving anyway, we fulfilled that need. So fast forward, we're doing, a variety of different events in each city. I traveled a lot last year to all of our chapter cities to try and get those things going. I went to New York 3 times and San Francisco twice. And we were in London very recently, actually. And, it was kind of hustle. Like it's really, it's been a hustle. And it was actually the beginning of March, end of February, when things started to kind of really ramp up with COVID-19, that we realized that we weren't going to be able to do our live conference, which is our flagship event, in April 2020. Mm. And at that time, I will be honest, it took me a little, there was like a grieving period, there was a lot of people that told me it's not going to happen. Yeah. And I took, a good 24 to 48 hours to kind of be like, no, I think it's going to happen. We'll put protocols in place. And it then soon became very real that it wasn't going to happen. And so we had kind of been mulling this idea of revamping our online platform, because quite frankly, technology changes so quickly these days. And even the technology that we engaged in 2018 wasn't working for us anymore. Mm. And So I got my team together and I said, so how quickly can we launch this new platform, this new online platform that we've had our eyes on? And we relaunched our online membership with a very slick new platform, as well as postponing our in-person conference until October.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, I mean, a lot of people said, are you going to do an online conference? Are you doing an online conference? And quite frankly, I've always craved and always loved that like personal connection piece. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do an online conference. And then about a week later, I announced that, well, we're going to do something online. Not an online conference, but we're going to do something. Because I quite frankly, I was really feeling for the community of all the women that had signed up for the April conference that couldn't come anymore. And I recognized that I wanted to create some content for them. That's what I love to do. I love to create content. And so within about a week, we came up with Pivot, which was a series of online panels that we did the week that conference was supposed to happen. So that's what happened in March.
Yeah. You know what? There's so much I love about this story. And first, it's the decision, right? Like we have in our programs, in our sort of core program, we have 3 annual retreats per year for our members to come together, and they're a big deal. We go to different places. They're really fun. People come from all over the world. It's a big deal. And so we have one in May, and we had to make that decision in February to make it a virtual. And I remember, it was back before, like now looking back, well, of course, but at that time, as we're trying to go through the decision-making process, we don't know. So you kind of have to make the call. And I really feel, I know so many entrepreneurs who had to cancel events, like live events, or change them. And it's a hard thing to do, and I think to your point, there's so many times in business where we have to make decisions. We don't have all the information. We have to do the best we can. We have to support our own decisions, even though we know some people might not be happy with it and whatever. So my hat goes off to entrepreneurs and women leaders who are doing that. But there's this aspect to what you said. You're like, we're not going to do an online conference. And then, the new reality starts to set in and you're like, maybe we will. And I think that process of like going to school in public, like learning, you know what I mean? No, we're not going to do that. You know what? Actually, we might. So I love that. But here's the thing, like there's so much from an events perspective. I want to ask you some tips and details about in-person events, because they're going to come back at some point. But your process of taking the WNORTH, like your flagship event that was supposed to be in April, and then moving that into an online, the online space. What did you learn? What tips, strategies can you share with our listeners about moving, an offline event to an online event and creating that connection that your company has been so masterful at creating between women, at events? What tips do you have for us?
Well, my first sort of lesson was think big. I mean, you don't have the barriers of travel costs or, scheduling in your way anymore. And for me, I had, for the conference, they had this kind of wish list of all these people that I've asked before, they couldn't make it, scheduling didn't work. And so with Pivot, we had, an executive from Amazon Web Services from Seattle. We had a diversity inclusion leader from Indeed in San Francisco. Like we were able to bring all of these speakers together fairly easily without, geographic barriers. So think big in terms of your speakers. And the other thing I would say is understand that you're not going to, especially, I think when people think about like an online conference, they think, oh, well, it's just like an in-person conference, but, all online. And so you're going to have like 8 till 5 p.m. of programming. No. I knew that wasn't going to work. So I said, we're going to do 3 one-hour sessions. And we're just going to pack a lot of really great content into those hours. because that's all I can really expect to get out of our community during this time. Everyone is quite busy.
Yeah.
The one thing I'm still trying to figure out, and if there's anyone out there that has ideas on this, is timing. We picked 10 a.m. to do a session, but we are trying. Yeah, so we were trying to serve a community across Canada and the U.S. and then some of our members in London too. So we're still playing around with that. We haven't perfected it. We're considering 8 a.m. in Pacific Standard Time, but you've also got families with children and you don't know what might work for them. So there's a number of lessons. I think don't overcomplicate it as well, in terms of what you want to achieve and just focus on quality versus quantity.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good one. So guys, let's, whatever platform you're listening on, please go ahead and post the tips. So number one, think big. So as you are moving your events from an in-person situation to an online situation, you don't have to deal with people's schedules, with flights, with all of that kind of thing, which makes people a lot more accessible. There's a lot more ability to, so really kind of think big. I love that. The other thing that you talked about was really kind of keeping it simple, not overcomplicating. So having kind of a clear goal for the event, thinking through timing. So rather than sort of an 8 to 5 kind of situation, you're like, look, we chose 3 different hour-long chunks and like moving that material into 3 hour-long chunks, which is a really good idea, and not trying to kind of do everything. So those are really excellent tips. I've got a question about, because you have an event. So for instance, like, people can go and learn, like, if you want to go to the next WNORTH, like in-person event, you can, and you should, people. But I'm so curious, because you are an event planner, you have another business, which is an event planning business. What do you think is going to happen in the in-person event world? What are your predictions around that?
Definitely. Well, I'm following it on the daily, I'll tell you that. So, I think that it's going to be a slow opening up process. I mean, we have, and quite frankly, it's going to be a while until we can, gather in large groups. I think about, that very large conference that you go to in Vegas or whatnot. And I think it's going to be a while until they get that right. Or what will that look like in the future? So I think when you talk about what events will look like in the future, I think they will be smaller. I think that they will focus on smaller gatherings, conferences under 1,000 people for a little while until we get kind of a vaccine and more protocols in place. But events will come back. Events will be back soon, I believe, and they will just take a different shape or form. And there's a lot of uncertainty. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline looks like, but it's going to be one stage at a time. So I think there will be a time where events under 50 are going to be allowed, and then events under 250. I think that's how they're going to scale it up, and then under 1,000 people. But there's a number of things to consider that a lot of people have not thought of, which is, what does the new food safe look like? You won't be able to go to an event and have a buffet. It's just not going to happen.
Event host, you're like, oh, are you serious? Because that's like a really affordable way to feed people.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. Yes. So buffets, from what I'm reading, I'm pretty involved in the restaurant industry as well. So buffets, even family style at weddings and those types of things, off the cards right now. There are just sort of simple things, like I've been talking to some photographers about and makeup artists about getting people ready for events. Like, makeup artistry is a very personal, like, you're touching people, and so there's those elements of events that you don't always think of, that it may take a little bit longer to come back from. And a lot of those industries are not necessarily well regulated. Food service is, but there's those elements that we still need to work through protocol for what that looks like.
Yeah, totally. Well, for when we do go back, and it's so interesting, like for instance, one of the Air Canada bosses today said that he thought that probably by Christmas time, we'll start to see more international travel opened up. And he's like, expect fewer flights, expect more connections at Christmas, so
Yeah.
it is kind of long haul. That said, while I have you, multiple events planned per year, a really strong sense of the types of events that people love,
Yeah.
another, event planning business in addition. One of the things that I found so fascinating as we were sort of talking and planning out what we were going to talk about today is you were talking about the kinds of events that you love to do. So it doesn't have to be the big conference. And, for people who are planning events are very often break even at best, right? So they are a way to bring people together. It's a great thing to do. It's like a service. It's truly a service that you're offering people, but they're not necessarily the ticket. So tell us a little bit about the types of in-person events that you have loved to offer. They're simple. They really work just to kind of get people thinking about things that they could do when this does open up again.
For sure. So I'll go back to our member meetups that we started when we got that feedback that they just craved that in-person connection. We wanted to offer something that was free, but with, a limited budget. This is for members. So we are a subscription-based business. We have a networking membership that is $30 US a month or $300 US a year. And so we wanted to create in-person monthly gatherings. And we didn't have, like, if they were free, we didn't have a ton of money to do it. So breakfast. So, their breakfasts are fairly easy and cheaper to execute. And we did them in smaller gatherings. And we brought in a speaker or a workshop facilitator that oftentimes, they'll have a new coaching program or they'll have something that they're interested in kind of sharing as well. So that would be, focusing on who's in your core community. And again, I say, go back to that quality versus quantity in terms of attendees.
Yeah.
So you have, you could go to an event with 100 people that don't really connect with you and that don't have the similar experience, or you can go to an event with 10 people that really do. And those are the events that people will take a lot out of. So if you have I wanted to just go back to what we were saying about, now a lot of businesses that maybe were in events are not doing as much, and maybe they don't have the bandwidth to even do online events right now. A lot of what I'm hearing, and I've heard, Eleanor, you talk about this as well, is we are in a stage of service to our customers right now. So if there is anything you can do, even in the smallest, if you're not able to sell or they're not able to buy at the moment, figure out how you can serve your community. And sometimes that is just creating connections and sending an email to 2 of your customers that, hey, I know you 2 might want to, meet for, FaceTime or something. So that is something that in the online space or in the in-person space, people are going to need more than ever moving forward, is that personal connection. So focus on those kind of smaller gatherings.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, listen, this has been it. We are actually at time. I can't believe it. This has been so awesome to connect. But I want, for the people who are here, and want to know more about WNORTH and how they can get involved, either by, learning about your events, learning about how to become a member. Where do they go and check out your brand new, gorgeous, sleek membership site, by the way? Where do they do that?
So go to wnorthconnect.com, and we have just launched our new membership site to our current members, and we have a wait list to join when we open the new membership site in the next little while. I'm not committing to a time right now, probably next week. And so join our wait list. We will notify you as soon as enrollment opens, and it's there's two options: networking membership, which is virtual, virtual and in-person connections. So those would be more our leadership mastermind program comes in part of that. And then we also have a digital membership. So if you're looking to sort of delve into workshops and online content that way, then you can join that one.
Awesome. WNorthConnect.com. Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate it. And I can't wait till we can hang out in person.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
This was a great way to start Friday.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.